All right, so let's talk more about Ansible inventory management. And this video is going to be a little bit of a review of some of the stuff we talked about in the last video. We're going to briefly define Ansible inventory, some of the characteristics of Ansible inventory, the inventory file location and rules, Ansible inventory grouping best practices. We're going to talk about defining nested groups, ranges of inventory. We're going to briefly look at the INI versus YAML formatting, and then how to verify inventory. So the definition of Ansible inventory, it defines a collection of hosts managed by Ansible. It's how we organize and separate our hosts that Ansible will interact with. Just a few characteristics of Ansible inventory. Hosts can be assigned to groups or not assigned to groups. Groups can have child groups. Hosts can be a member of multiple groups. Variables can be set to apply to individual hosts or groups. The inventory file location is defined in the ansible.cfg file. You can define it either as a YAML file or as an INI file. This one right by where my cursor is, where the inventory equals ./myhost would be an example of the INI format, and the one directly above it would be an example of the YAML format. And then etc/ansible/host is the default location of the host file, which is going to be used if there's no inventory defined in the ansible.cfg file. And if you need to figure out what inventory file is in use, it's defined in the ansible.cfg file. So you need to be able to determine what ansible.cfg file is in use, and you can do that with the ansible space -- version command. That's going to show you what ansible.cfg file is being used. And then you could look at that ansible.cfg file and determine what inventory is being used. So there are two persistent Ansible groups that are going to be there no matter what. One is all and one is ungrouped. All includes all hosts no matter what groups they're in. Ungrouped is going to contain hosts that are not a member of another group. Here we have some inventory grouping best practices. So there are a number of different ways that you can group your hosts. The first of which would be by the purpose or the role of the host. For example, you could have access switches and aggregation switches. You can group them by geography or what data center they're in, as in US or Canada, or you could group them in the East data center and the Central data center, or you could do staging versus production. Group names should not have dashes in them, but underscores are okay. You also should not give a group the same name as a host. And the main concept of grouping is that you want to group together hosts that have common configuration. All right, so you can have nested groups. Ansible host inventories can include groups of host groups. In the INI format, you'd use the :children suffix, and we're going to show you an example of that in a second here. You can also define ranges of inventory, and that includes host names or IP addresses. So both numeric and alphabetic ranges work, and you're using the bracket start : end as I have shown there. And another important thing to note is that the zeros do count. So the two examples that I have there are completely different. So here we have the ABC and we have the 0, 1, and 0, 2. It's different than just 1 and 2. Here we have a couple of examples of defining ranges of inventory. This line right here by my mouse is the same thing as the list of 4 here. And then down here at the bottom, we use the brackets to encompass the entire /24 subnet. And so here I just have an example of the INI format on the left. It's going to be equivalent to what I have on the right. So you can see that I have the two groups, USA and Canada, and then I have the nested group of North America that includes USA and Canada. And so then you can compare that to what I have over here on the right-hand side and see how the YAML is formatted. All right, so how to verify the inventory. You can use the ansible-inventory command to verify the inventory. You can use the -i option argument to detect inventory on another file path. You would then just have to specify that file path. And then you can use the ansible-inventory-y space -- command. It will display the current inventory in YAML format. So if you have it defined in INI format and you need to quickly convert it to YAML format for whatever reason, you can use that command and then just copy the output. And then we have this Ansible command here if you need to check if a specific host is in the inventory. And that's this command that I have right here, the Ansible router1 -- list -host command. And another thing to note, if an inventory contains a host and a group with the same name, a warning is printed and it's going to point to the host while ignoring the group. All right, so now we are going to do some examples. Okay, so I have my GNS3 Lab and Linux device pulled up, and I'm just going to quickly show you what I've done so far. So as root, I've created an Ansible config file and a my host file. So more Ansible config, just to show you how I've defined inventory in INI format in my host file. More my host, just to look at that. As you can see, I've configured two different groups. One is US routers, which contains a range of routers 1 through 4, and a range of switches 1 through 4. And then I've defined both those groups as children of US devices. All right, so our first verification command is going to be Ansible version. So this shows us that we are in fact using this Ansible config file, which means our inventory is going to be this my host file here. And just to verify that again, we're going to use the Ansible inventory list command. All right, so you can see that it has listed all of those routers there and the switches, and then the two children groups. The host virus is empty, and then we have the two child groups as well. All right, next we are going to do the command that will translate it into the YAML format. So even though we defined it as an INI format, this is what it would look like in YAML format. And then lastly, we're going to try this command to see if US router 1 is indeed in the inventory. And there it shows that it is. All right, so in this video, we defined Ansible inventory. We looked at its characteristics, the file location and rules. We looked at grouping best practices, defining nested groups, ranges of inventory. We looked at INI versus YAML formatting, and we looked at how to verify inventory and some examples. Hopefully you found this helpful. If so, please consider liking and subscribing. And with that, I will see you in the next one. Thank you.